only three countries, Germany and the United States, to host both the World Cup football and the Summer Olympics in 2 years. And that's a great thing for the country, and yet there's a lot of people, and maybe you can talk to us about this. It seems like there's a lot of people in the country who look at this and say, well, this may be prestige for the country, but it's not necessarily good for us as citizens. Can you frame that for us?
Yeah, I mean, the same people who 7 years ago or 8 years ago were cheering the fact that Brazil was awarded the right to host these two events, they're basically the same people that were in the streets recently protesting against, not directly against the events, but against the fact that the government needs to prioritize spending. And while many people are seeing a lot of money being put to stadiums, they're not seeing the infrastructure surrounding the stadiums, which basically metro systems and et cetera, being improved. So I think that it is definitely a challenge of a country that's coming to terms with the fact that it's much more powerful, but there are many issues to be dealt with in terms of development in Brazil.
Talk to me a little bit more about that. You say 7 years ago, these are the people that were championing it, because this really is kind of an interesting dynamic in that it's not just the poor, it's some of the middle class very disenchanted about this as well, correct?
I think Brazil's rise is not the end of a process, it's the beginning of a process, actually. The fact that now the country has not only more international visibility, but also has to do more and more with domestic challenges to reduce inequality, tackle poor infrastructure. So I think now it's the real debate in Brazil has begun. Where should we spend this money? Of course, the economy has grown. There's more money going around, but there are also many challenges. So I think that it's just the beginning of a process of a country that has reached a new level.
You talk about that disenchantment, but you also worked for the Brazilian Senate, and it seems to me that the people are also very unhappy about corruption in the country. And how is that being addressed, and is it aggressive enough?
Well, corruption is definitely a problem in Brazil and other democracies, I think, and a big problem that hinders more development, where you see a lot of money being shifted away from important projects to basically because of corruption. I think that today, even though you may see more headlines on it in Brazil than, say, 10, 15 years ago, the situation has improved. There's more accountability. There's more transparency today in Brazil than there was 10, 15, 20 years ago. But of course, it's that ongoing challenge. It'll never be over. And I think that part of the protest had to do also with corruption. But I think that the government and some other independent agencies in Brazil are doing their best to kind of tackle it, but it's definitely 2 steps forward and 1 step back when it comes to evolution in battling corruption.
Did the protests surprise you at all as a man who goes to that area back and forth, or did you sort of see it coming as well?
No, of course, with social media today, it's hard to predict these kind of movements because the cost of mobilization is very low, very low. But the broader story here for Brazil is the story of the rise of the middle class over the last 10, 20 years, which a middle class that has more political or more sophisticated political demands. They demand more from the political class. So they are disgruntled with the quality of public services. So there is, while the economic situation overall is not that unfavorable, there is some latent discontent with public services, but it's difficult to pinpoint what the trigger for the protests were. I mean, some may say that was the warm-up to the World Cup, that people actually saw the stadiums. They literally saw the cost of hosting these international events. So, you know, I was surprised, of course, as many were, with the protest itself, but the broad story of a rise of the middle class and how it's much more challenging for governments, for leaders to deliver to that middle class, that's a story that we've been monitoring for quite a while.
Can you sign our contract that you have that I have prepared yesterday?
Can we like meet up and discuss it somewhere else? Like we meet face to face? Okay, see you then. Bye.
Okay, bye.